I like that graphic. I really do. I like, I like that upbeat music. Hi, Ken. How you doing?
Hi, I'm good,
Everybody,
thanks.
welcome. My name is Bobby, and you are watching an episode of Behind the Cards on Robert Fierro Tarot. I am a tarot card reader. I have been for 40 years. I am also a witch in service to Hekate. And today we're being joined by my friend Kenn Payne from England, all the way as a transatlantic call. And we are going to discuss the goddess. Ken, uh, please, first of all, tell us about yourself.
I'm Ken. Um, I've been a sort of devoted follower of Hekate for the last 15 years or so. But I've been a practicing sort of witch and pagan since I was like 15. So I have about 26 years of experience under my belt at this point.
Um, you have one thing I want to throw out for everybody. Your channel name and logo says Aditan. What is this word? Just so people know.
So an Aditon is or was a part of the inner sanctum of ancient temples. So it was the bit where the gods were said that they would, that was their bit. That's where they were housed. But it was also because there was references to it where it was also where the oracles would be. So the oracles would go in and channel through the gods. And I just thought it was quite a nice term, especially with obviously my deck Oracle of the Hekatean Path coming out. So obviously, I thought if I
Oh,
changed my
you have a
channel,
deck?
did nobody tell you? But yeah, I
Ken,
just thought
you have a
by
deck?
by having my channel name sort of named after the place where the Oracle came forth in ancient temples, I just thought it was quite a nice um, sort of nod towards it.
Okay. Let's say hello to a couple people before we start. We got some peoples in. We've got Maruta. Uh, Heather's here. Soul Academy with Indigo Jaguar. Hecta's Faithful is here. Did someone say shenanigans? I love that name so much. Did someone say shenanigans? Free Spirit. We will be taking questions later, you guys. But for now, we are going to, well, hopefully we'll be taking questions. We'll see how this discussion goes. We're working under the assumption that somebody has never heard of the goddess before. If somebody approached you and says, I want to learn about Hekate, what can you tell me? What would your opening statement be?
Probably I would I would say ask me an easier one. But no, I mean it is hard to
Right.
know. It is hard to know where to start because when you actually get down into the details, there is so much to learn. Um, but I definitely would say that she is obviously she's ancient. She is far reaching and has lots of. In fact, I can't really think of anything that she doesn't necessarily have an influence on or control over. So she becomes quite
Yeah, I was searching for an ask. I was the same thing. I was looking for something that she wouldn't cover. I just dropped a whole bunch of tarot cards. Um, I was reaching for your deck. And I was trying to do it. Yeah, so many aspects. Now, when we say aspects of the goddess, let's assume people don't understand what that means. Can you explain that?
some the way I see aspects of the deity, especially like Hecate, is that these are all the things, the qualities or the the energies or the powers that she possesses, and all of the things that she rules over or has effect over. So, when we talk about witchcraft and crossroads and liminality and healing and all of those kind of things, those are all aspects of her which can be pinned down when we start to look at things like her associated symbols, as well as her historical cult titles or epithets.
Okay, Heather is saying Hekate is the goddess of the crossroads. She is that. She is. However, she is way much more than that. Before we get into that, though, I heard some exciting news last night, right before I went to sleep. Actually, I was reading. That's when I catch up on my news. It puts me to sleep, actually. There, what what is the word? Rebuilding or excavating and fixing the temple at Lagina.
Oh, yeah. I saw that
What is
last
that
night as well.
word?
I can't think of the bloody word now. It begins with an R.
Right?
It's not refurbish. It's
Refurbish,
re. Come on, people, help us out. Re, I don't know, but they're going to
somebody
be.
in the crowd. What is that word when they go in, they excavate it, they put it back together properly? Anyway,
Yeah,
the
but
point
yeah,
is
basically
they're doing it,
they're
and I
going.
am so excited because I'm going to. I will go.
Yeah, I felt the same.
Renovating. Thank you.
Renovating, rejuvenate,
Rejuvenate's a good one.
it's something along those lines. Probably all of them and other things. But yeah, I found that really, really
All of
exciting, that because
that.
they have done, they have been continuing excavations, obviously when the seasons allow. But they're all, since it was first excavated, they've, originally re-erected one of the archways, and then I think more recently they kind of put the columns or the column bases back in position. But they are now looking to obviously go one step further and make it a lot more sort of restore. That's the word I was trying to think about. That was it. They are restoring Hecate's temple at Lagina in Turkey.
Restore, restoration, I think is right.
Restoration, I think, yeah.
The renovating and restoration, those are the two words that I was looking for. Your deck, let's start there because that has become my restore, refurbish, exactly. I'm going to be thinking R words for the rest of the day. So, your deck, Oracle of the Hekatean Path. I have two of these decks, as I've told you before. One for working with my clients, and one for devotion. There's no easy way to say it. I shit on myself when I saw this deck was coming out. I literally screamed out loud and was running around in a little circle doing one of these things because I took it as another sign that the goddess is returning. And when I see the temple being restored, the goddess is returning. I feel this, witches around the world feel this, and we're all very excited about it. Your deck is split into sections. Can you explain the sections? Let's try that as far as Hekate goes.
Yeah, so I mean, it's divided into sort of roughly three sections. The first 26, 27 cards are her epithet titles. So these are titles of aspects, as we mentioned before. These are the sort of cultish titles or literary titles that were attributed to her in history. So we have things like Chthoniya, of the earth, Sotera, the savior, Nycteria of the
That's
night,
the aspect.
Potnia Theron, the lady of wild beasts. So these are all these are all different names for the same goddess. If Hekate is her main name, that's her main understood name, then the epithets are all different ways of describing her, of drawing attention from her, because the way that ancients prayed was very structured, and it tended to be along the lines of calling out the god or goddess by her main name, and then a litany of all of these other associated titles in order to garner their attention, so that you could then offer sacrifice or whatever you were doing. It was about getting their attention first, because they're not necessarily watching you every second of every day. So yeah, the first bit is the titles, the epithets. The second bit was sort of the symbolic attributes, so things that we associate with Hecate when we see her. So things like the dagger or the cave, the moon cycles, the black hound, Hecate's wheel. And then obviously the last section of the cards is to do with the associated spirits and other deities that were associated with her through antiquity. So we have examples such as Zeus and Artemis and Demeter, the restless dead, and things like that. So it's quite broad in what it covers, and yet I haven't really exhausted it. It only just sort of touches on the wide range and multifacetedness of her.
I was wondering how you narrowed it down to only a few epithets, because there's so many.
Yeah, I mean, it was difficult because
How did you do that?
well, I mean, initially I had a rough idea of the ones that I definitely wanted to include, and they were the ones that most people are largely familiar with, like Cathonia and Enodia and Dadaphoros. Those were the ones, her in a torch bearing aspect and a crossroad aspect and a underworld aspect. They were things that people would readily recognize. But I also wanted to sort of not exhaust all of the really sort of popular ones. So, another one that is often very commonly associated with her is Kurotrophos, which is the nurturer of youths, or nurturer of children. And actually, I didn't want to use that one in the Oracle deck, but I used other titles with a similar vein or flavor that maybe weren't as well known. So card number 2 is Pametor, the mother of all, which has that nurturing quality. And then a bit later on, there's the Pandotira, the all giver. So it kind of covers different bases, but from slightly less well known epithets. And I didn't, as much as there are some really, really cool ones, obviously I didn't want them to be too obscure. There is one that I can't there is one that I can't even fathom to pronounce, but it roughly translates as goddess who wears gold sandals and drinks blood, and it's just amazingly evocative, but I wouldn't
Wow.
want to try and embarrass myself to
Um,
pronounce it.
yeah, I had trouble learning how to say Rototokia. That was the one that got me.
Yeah,
Uh, and that is the
and I
aspect
think
of the
most
goddess that
people,
deals with
the
carnal.
one that most people tend to trip over is the Epiphanestate Thea, the most manifest goddess. But
Most manifest
fear
goddess.
not, people. There will be a pronunciation guide in the expanded guidebook.
That's awesome. When you say expanded guidebook, elaborate.
Well, basically, it's the book that I wanted to have with the deck when it came out, because the idea of the deck is it wasn't meant to just be a divination tool, it's also meant to be a devotional tool as well as a learning tool. And because of the publisher specs for their multilingual booklet, I didn't have the scope to go into a lot of depth. So this is the book
Right.
where there is a full introduction on who Hekate is. There is a lot more information about how to use the deck in different ways. More spreads, and then each card goes in depth about obviously where where the origins of its association comes from, its relation to Hekate, and then deeper divinatory meanings for the card themselves.
Okay. There are aspects of the goddess that are so beautiful. To just, my soul gets happy just thinking about Sotera, uh, Pandotera, the giving, loving, nurturing aspects of the goddess. But let's be real, she's got some terrifying aspects as well. Um, if you see witches or pagans trying to say, "Oh no, the goddess isn't like that. She's all loving," like, no, okay, she's a vicious goddess when she gets down to it. Okay, Brimo is one of her aspects. Brimo is, the terrifying one, the angry one. Um, Brimo is an aspect that got me in trouble once, and it's your fault actually. I was I had just gotten my first deck, and I was going through the deck, and I was talking to a friend of mine on the phone, or somebody who isn't a friend now. And it was while I was doing the deck, going through it, and card by card, looking at it as I was talking to her, that I started realizing things about her. And we got to Brimo, and I'm looking at Brimo, and I snapped at that woman, and I let her have it out of nowhere. And it turns out everything I was saying was accurate, but that was the first time I had connected with Brimo in that way. And it just told me this deck has the ability to connect people with the divine in a special way. And for that, I want to say thank you on behalf of witches everywhere around the world. What would you say is the most what is the goddess aspect that you would suggest people meet first?
See, that is, again, it's not, I would never say the same one for every person, because obviously everybody's going to be coming from a different walk of life, from a different set of experiences. I know from my point of view, and obviously in talking and reading from other devotees over the years, that more often than not, the aspect that comes through is usually either one of the ones of a torch bearing aspect, or a crossroad related aspect, or a guidance companion type, because most often than not, it's when we are going through turmoil or trauma or a dark night of the soul, or we're feeling very detached, and that tends to be the inroad for Hecate to sort of get more hands on. And it can be daunting, because there are still all of those misconceptions out there where people go, "Oh, she's a dark goddess, only experienced people should bother with her, and she doesn't do this and she doesn't like that." And it's easy to get bogged down in the details of what everybody else is doing, but actually, from my experience, I when she came through, it was like a huge sort of relief and weight was lifted off my shoulders. And the I'm not gonna pretend that my life has ever been plain sailing or easy or anything like that, because it certainly hasn't. But for me, Hekate has definitely been a constant. She has been, the one thing that has remained through my conscious devotion to her. But I mean, for people that are just starting out, that maybe want something, a specific sort of aspect to deal with, I would literally look at things like torch bearing aspects, so the Daphoros, light bearing aspects, possibly even to the point of Satiro, this big sort of salvic light bearing aspect. But just starting with the basics, Enodia, the crossroads, go to where people have celebrated her in memoriam. They're probably the easiest channels, and the rest kind of comes as part of the learning process. Oh, hi, Richie.
Richie's here. Hi, Richie. Adam, also, how many people in the crowd are devotees of Hekate, may I ask? We'll throw that question out. I know Adam is. I am. You are. There's a few others. I know devotee of Hekate is. Hekate is faithful. I mean, uh, what you said about the crossroads makes a lot of sense because that is where decisions are made. So that seems to be the jump off point. I agree. That would be the best place to start. She's one goddess with a lot of different faces. Um, when you meet somebody, you're meeting all of those aspects at once. And over time, different aspects of that relationship will unfold. And throughout the years, different aspects of Hekate have shown themselves to me. And I'm amazed that what I thought I knew, I don't know. And she takes great joy in telling me I don't know. Let's just say that. Um,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She likes pulling rugs out from under people.
I I don't consider myself okay. Here's something. Uh, key holders, torch bearers. These are the traditional ways people view themselves as followers of Hekate. I don't. I don't view myself in that way. I've told you this before. I view myself as one of Hecate's dogs. I run with her. I protect the people that she has set me to protect.
Mhm.
I I just view myself that way, and I know a couple of other people that do. And people don't say, "Yeah, I view myself as a dog," but when I say it, other people say, that's actually clever. Um, don't get caught up in dogma, I guess is the point that I'm saying to people. Don't don't think you have to know her in the same way that another person knows her. Your relationship with her is your relationship with her.
Oh, absolutely.
Um, it's going to evolve over time. Uh, How has your relationship with her evolved from the beginning till now? That's a long.
Um,
That's a big question.
in some ways, it hasn't. And I don't mean that I've not made any progress, but she still is there for me in a similar vein, that I often find myself needing to be drawn closer to her. Um, when I'm struggling, or I'm going through hard, difficult choices in my life. um a little on the nose with the dogma. Yeah, the but I think, obviously, from when I first started, and I started to sort of try and read up about her and find out more information, most of it was just the same rehashed little, half a
Yeah.
paragraph, no real sources, just kind of, oh, she's the crone goddess of magic from the Greek pantheon, full stop. And it didn't, there was just this sort of similar things kind of rehashed and repeated over and over and over again. So it did take a little bit of digging around to start to learn more about her historically. And it was through that then obviously that you start to learn all these different aspects and these different ways in which she was interacted with and worshipped. And also you start to see how all pervading her influence has been, from the earliest known sources, that and then even after the fall of antiquity and sort of paganism, she still kind of crops up here and there on the timeline, even if it is as a reviled demon in Christianity, or in Macbeth from in medieval Shakespeare times. But she's it is that common chain of persistence that kind of, there's got to be something that we probably will never quite grasp, but there's got to be a reason why she has managed to continue like that. As certainly as well in the last
That's an interesting point. I didn't mean to cut you off, but we
no, it's
won't
fine.
be able to understand everything about her. We never will. That's the whole point of the goddess. She's got that veil there. She's behind that veil. We can't reach and understand her from where we are in this realm. It's just not going to happen. So
No.
that's all I wanted to say. Please continue with yours.
Yeah, and I mean, especially like the last sort of 15, 20 years, where what I term as the Hecatean Renaissance, this resurgence and this active part that she's playing in calling on witches and devotees and priests and priestesses across the world. That it isn't a case of just looking at this goddess through a classical lens and just fixating her in the Mediterranean. She at this point in time, she is now everywhere. And again, I think that it is because she is such, and always has been such, such close proximity to the human condition. So because she was associated with necessarily the things that other gods would shy away from, like death and childbirth and those kind of things, and the fact that she was put at the crossroads and the doorways and the entrance halls and the temples. So she was at every point and then every part of everyday life. So it makes sense that she never really went away, even if we'd forgotten what her name was.
The first thing that I knew about the goddess, and this was my introduction as a 15-year-old boy. She was introduced to me as the Mad Goddess. That is how I met her. That is how I was introduced to her. And the way it was taught to me by the woman at the time was the three aspects in one body. She's seeing everything all at once. So the people that talk to her view her as mad because of the things that she would say. This is how I met her. And over time, it has evolved now to where she is everything, pretty much. Like you say, there's so many aspects of her. There's not an aspect of my life that I do not associate with her in some way. She is the daughter of the Titan Perseus and Aradia, right?
Asteria.
And I couldn't think. Asteria, A. I was like, why am I having a brain fart? Anyway, daughter of the stars and destruction. And she is two different things from the get go. She is possibility and destruction. So the destruction and the possibility to rebuild. Everybody is going to find their own way to know her. There are, again, I'm going to touch on this, the positive aspects um, and the negative aspects. The negative aspects that people view as negative that aren't actually negative.
Yeah.
Era
Negativity
Hekatea
comes from
can
usually
be,
from our resistance to change.
yes, exactly. There's difficult, Borbara Forba is a very difficult one for people to wrap their heads around.
Yeah.
The eater of filth.
Hmm.
And please, Ken, explain this.
So I kind of I've it's one of my favorites. It's become, one of my favorite ones in the deck because it always, when I've been watching people doing, deck unboxings and sort of leafing through the deck, this is the one of the ones that makes them sort of almost stumble because they don't quite get it at first. And then they, when they're starting
Right.
to look at the image of let me just see if I can find it, because it's a very visual card.
Yeah, I was
I
just digging for it too.
do have my deck in front of me, so do
Hmm,
excuse me while I'm flicking. But
I've got it.
yeah,
Okay.
it's it is basically this female figure that's kind of almost like gorging herself on stuff, and then the skulls, but they're all in this like really putrid, almost decay type, miasmic color palette. um and the notion of this eater of filth, um it comes from when Hecate starts to be associated with the spirits of the dead and the desolate crossroads and the cemeteries and things, because obviously in antiquity places like that were not necessarily as organized or sterile as they can be for people, like for our understandings. If you went to a crossroads, there could be bodies hanging from places, or somebody could have been murdered and chucked in a ditch, and you might have wild dogs wandering around chewing on bits. But when you start to look at it the way that they possibly were interpreting that, we know that dogs are sacred to Hecate, but then for them to see them sort of eating bits of body that was left around, basically consuming the disease making parts of human remnants and such, in a way kind of sees it can be interpreted as them visualizing that is the goddess consuming the miasma to prevent disease and other unsavory things. And in the same sort of way, it becomes this it's like a cathartic purging that you can offer all of those horrible things that you want to be rid of. So whether even whether we're talking figurative or literally, addiction or um pain or trauma, you offer them to to these purging fires, and she consumes it. She consumes all of that horrible nasty stuff that we don't want anything to be part of, and she just does away with it. She can transform that energy into something more through her transformative fires. um and I and as much as it's quite a visceral card and it gets quite a strong reaction at first, once you explain it to people, in that despite its outward appearance, it is actually quite a positive card that can be used to great effect, certainly with healing and things like that. Then they kind of soften a bit to it. But I think that notion of life and death, we've become very sanitized in our understanding of everything, beyond beyond the end of life. And Hecate is there in the midst of it all. She doesn't mind, rummaging around in the dirt and doing away with diseases and nasty things and wayward spirits and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. I mean, one of the best bits I recommend for people to read if they haven't is it's a book by Jacob Rabonovitz. I can't remember what his surname is. It's called The Rotting Goddess, and it kind of talks about different aspects of Hekate, but it kind of starts on this point of um, this notion of Hekate as an eater of filth, as a sort of corpse eater, and he quotes. I think it's a passage from the PGM, the Greek magical papyri, where she's described as, tomb frequenting, eater of hearts that munches on basically human effluence, and she's offered incense that's created out of fat and baboon poo, and all of the really horrible, noxious things that we would have no part on. And yet it's all, as it all serves a purpose to cleanse and to purify the person. Sorry, I've waxed lyrical a bit on that one.
No, this is the whole point that we're here, is so people can understand. Another reason I like that is when I make mistakes, I offer those mistakes up and say, please eat this, not forgive, but help me not to make this mistake again. Eat this up and get it out of my life. Shenanigans, my favorite name of everybody, says, coming out of lurk mode, I've read a couple places that Medusa is an aspect of Hekate. Do either of you find this to be so? This is Gorgo, Hekate Gorgo.
Yeah. So
Gorgo the Greek.
I don't sort of associate them as like being the same figure. I find that they are independent of each other. However, like with the card Gorgo, that title of Gorgo refers to Gorgons, and obviously there were other Gorgons besides just Medusa. She had two sisters,
right.
But the notion of I mean, we have come to believe that Medusa is evil, and she's a man hater, and it's a very tragic and uninspiring tale. But actually, the symbol of the Gorgon was used for evil averting. It was an apotropaic talisman. It was on shields. It was on doors. It was on masonry.
Whoa,
and
stop.
And
Hold. Back that up. I know what the word means. You know what the word means.
Oh, sorry, apotropaic. So yeah, that basically just means evil averting or misfortune averting.
Right. There's an aspect of Hekate also, you guys, that is in his deck. I can't find the card right now, but it does deal with that.
Oh, the apotropeos. Yeah, it's not an exclusive role to Hekate. A lot of the gods were seen as apotropaic. But yeah, the Gorgon the symbology of the Gorgon was definitely seen as a protective amulet to ward off misfortune. But at the same time, it was, it's a terrifying thing. We tend to associate Medusa and Gorgons with, these serpentine women with, snakes in their hair kind of thing. But actually, if you look at the examples in that are on shields and vases and such, they're kind of like almost bearded figures with lolling tongues and tusks. And if you see a full-bodied one, they've got wings, and they don't look either male or female, but they're generally sort of perceived to be feminine, even though they've got a beard.
Sounds like an Oni.
Yeah, they're certainly interesting figures. But and so this association is that they're only really terrifying if you're on the wrong end of them. So if you're the one that's calling on
Right.
a Gorgon or calling on the Gorgon's ability to protect, then you're the other side of it.
When we talk about protection, not only is she a goddess, she's a freaking Titan goddess. That's what people aren't grasping. She's not just a goddess, she is more than that. She's older than the gods. She's older than the Greek gods. She's older than most gods.
Mm.
When I say that she kicks ass, that stems from this story right here. I was amazed the first time I heard the story as a kid. Clytus, the battle of the Titans and the Greek gods, she whooped that boy's ass. Okay, she took her torches and laid him out, and because of that, here's the thing: in Greek mythology, it's said, and we've discussed this before. In Greek mythology, it's said that Zeus allowed her to retain her power in the three realms of earth, the sea, and the sky. You and I both have issue with the word allow when it comes to this story, okay? Because I honestly believe that Zeus, seeing the way she defeated the Titan Clytus, freaked him out. Honestly, I do believe that. And he said, "No, no, I'm good. Keep it. It's all yours."
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it on the sort of scale of events that happen, she sided with Zeus to help him overthrow the Titans. She sided with Zeus to help him when the giants rose up in response to that. And you don't, although Zeus was kind of put back, in control at that point, he was now the new king of the gods. I like we've discussed before. It's this notion that you don't want to get on her bad side, and the fact that she just turns these rather unsuspecting, torches, which mostly are seen for illumination or, very benign things, and it's kind of, she just literally destroys Clytius with the torches. And so in some of the translations where it comes through as him allowing her to keep it, or not taking anything away from her, I don't think he could if he tried.
Exactly.
It's and I think he's fully aware of that, and that's not to throw shade at Zeus. I'm sure Hera
Oh
throws
no,
more than at him.
no. I'm not
But
going to throw shade at any gods.
but yeah, no, it's almost like a thing of, yeah, he's very aware that it's better to have Hekate on side than start another war with with
Yeah, and
I think she's a third or fourth generation Titan, so she's pretty
yeah,
high up there.
let's see, there was
I think depending on
second.
the genealogy, she's kind of up and down a bit, but she's
Yeah,
she's
it
certainly
depends.
one of the earlier ones.
If you guys want to see some interesting stories, look up on YouTube and watch the I can never pronounce these Titan Titanomachy.
Oh, the
Uh,
Titan, yeah, the Titanomachy and the
Titan,
Gigantomachy.
yeah, Gigantomachy. The battle of the Titans and the battle of the Giants. It's one of my favorite stories just to put on and go to bed to. Um, Hekate is the goddess of duality. She sees both sides. She sees three sides: present, past, and future. She sees everything. The name itself means far seeing, correct?
It's one of the interpretations, yeah.
Okay, what are some other interpretations?
So of it, like either far-seeing or far-reaching or working from afar is generally one of the sort of more commonly accepted. But actually, the true specifics meaning of the name isn't, isn't actually known. It's still debated. The prefix of Hekat or Heka kind of occurs on a lot of other associated words in ancient Greece. So you have a hecatomb, which is an offering of 100 oxen, and you have the 100-handed ones, the Heka something or others. My Greek's not.
Hekatonkery. Oh, that was, yeah.
Yeah, they were kind of children of Gaia, and I think Apollo has an epithet that has a Hecat prefix, and it's debated as to the specifics of what it means, but generally speaking, most people say worker from afar, or she who watches from afar, or has there's this notion of distance, but at the same time there's this notion, it kind of paints a picture of a very sort of capable goddess, because it doesn't matter that if even if she is figuratively miles away, she's still able to exert influence and to affect change. And for human lives, change is the only constant. And so it's interesting to see that the name kind of is that she's still attached regardless of where she is in this, in the grand scheme of things.
She she's there from birth to death. When we make choices throughout our life that can be associated with, um, obviously, Hekate choices there. But the thing that most people associate with her is the goddess of witchcraft, and as her aspect as a psychopomp.
Mm.
Now, for those who don't know, and I'm sure everybody here knows, but in case you don't, for new viewers, a psychopomp is a deity or spirit that guides you from this realm into the afterlife. Hecate, as a psychopomp, the goddess of transitions, is your card, and it's one of my favorite. I love all these cards. Chris Butler did an excellent job on this deck. I stare at it constantly. Um, I find that comforting, knowing that when I pass, she'll be there. I personally have I follow Hekte and Hermes. I know a lot of witches don't follow a male deity in their practice. I do.
Mhm.
They are both psychopomps. So I'm curious to see who's going to show up for this when I die. That's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
But as someone said earlier, I think it was Did Shenanigans. When she dies, she wants to run as a dog with Hecate also. And when I saw that, I'm not going to lie, whoever said it,
And there is
my little butthole.
precedence. There's precedence for it in antiquity literary references. There is a couple of variations on tales where Hecuba is transformed into a dog at the time of her death, the Queen Hecuba, and again, it's mixed up with the conflation between Artemis and Hecate, but both have a lot of associations in common. And I think when I was talking at the Tabby conference and I'm speaking about the associations of Hecate in the Major Arcana, and I was talking on the Hanged Man, and there's an obscure epithet that basically refers to the Hanged One, and it kind of is linked to a very obscure tale that is generally associated with Artemis, but it's basically that children were playing around with basically playing in the square, and they basically got the statue of Artemis out of the town square and put a rope round its neck and started joking that the goddess had hung herself. And then apparently the elders of the village got really angry and just killed the children, and the goddess basically took offense on them killing the children, and so started to affect all of the women with infertility and bad luck and various other things. And then they had to consult the Delphic oracle and make lots of apologies and bury the children properly, and then the goddess was fine. But there's also another sort of connected tale that there was a lady that was basically punished by Artemis and transformed into a dog for a period of time, then was eventually changed back, but she had there was a lot of shame that she felt, and so she committed suicide via hanging. And the goddess took pity on her by raising her back up as a dog. And again, the close conflation between Artemis and Hekate, it can't be sort of ignored in these things, because I often look at a lot of evidence that sort of stipulates, oh, this is Artemis, and there are certain times when I'm thinking, well, yeah, she hasn't got her bow and arrow, and it's like that's kind of it's not a deal breaker, but it's it's one of the more notable qualities of depictions of Artemis. So when I see images of a figure with torches or a dog and no bow and arrow that just says, oh, this is Artemis, I'm like, is it though? Could it be Hecate? It's just that people haven't taken the time to sort of identify it properly. Right. So yeah, I forgot what started me off on that one. My brain fried a bit.
Well, let's talk about conflation for a second. When the goddess is conflated with other goddesses in Greek mythology, we're familiar with that, but she can also be associated with goddesses in other cultures.
Mm-hmm.
You want to touch on that?
Yeah. So the prime examples kind of come from the sort of later Hellenistic Roman Egyptian world, where it's specifically the Greek magical papyri, which is a vast array of spells, where Hekate is one of the most referenced deities in the surviving fragments of it. And during a lot of the spells that call on her, it's also in tandem with other goddesses that have a lot of similar qualities that are not just from her own, well, from the Greek pantheon, but also from further afield. So you get conflation with Ereshkigal and Isis, even, and then obviously you get conflations with Kybele as well, and so it's a bit hard to sort of fully understand, because depending on how you view deity, whether you view them all as a facet of one supreme goddess or individually separate distinct beings, it can sort of color how you interpret conflation. Technically speaking, from a historical sort of cultural point of view, it generally was about when cities and cultures were expanding and interacting with the ones closest to them. They would see in a foreign land's religion or practice their gods just by different names, and that's where you start to get things like the Etruscan, the original Etruscan gods that were kind of merged with aspects of the Greek gods, so that the Roman then developed their pantheon. Because they're not, a lot of people will say, oh, Roman and Greek gods, they're just the same but with different names, and actually they're not. There are some differences, because of this hodgepodge conflation that they had a penchant for doing. But yeah, there is a lot of references within the PGM of Hekate having these other goddesses' names as sort of invoked, as aspects of her. And I think as well in the play The Golden Ass by Apuleius, although that is specifically referred to as Isis when she does her like her revelatory speech at the end, she describes herself as being called by all these different names by different people, and she says, she is called Hekate. And there is an example of Isis the magician being depicted with three faces like Hekate in different directions, and holding serpents similarly in a similar fashion to how Hekate would hold torches. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing to start to explore, but it can also make your head hurt.
I get that. The one thing that a question has come to me is certain names are tagged on to gods, and it's associated with many gods, like Angelos, Hermes. Hermes Angelos is one of the aspects that I follow. Hekate Angelos is one of the aspects that I follow of her. It's the protective, pure aspect that when I'm feeling empty and I need some spiritual power, I'll make offerings to those aspects. Um, when you call to her, do you call to her just as Hekate, or do you break it down into aspects?
Generally speaking, that I will kind of have this sort of all-encompassing notion of Hekate, but the nearest thing that I will associate with it will be Sotera, because in that role as Sotera, she's viewed as the cosmic world soul. So she's basically within everything, and everything is part of her. And this is when I start, as I've started to learn more about her. It's kind of like my own. If I'm there, when I first started, my understanding of Hekate and her sort of proximity to me was kind of here. But as I'm learning more and more, she's getting higher and higher and higher. But she's also getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and basically is everything. And like when you touched on like her parentage, Persis, destruction, Asteria, the stars, I see her as this being of like almost being born in like a big bang effect, kind of like the start of the universe. And she was there at the center of it, and she's still there at the center of it. And obviously, if you think from quantum physics types, where the universe is expanding to a point where eventually it will contract, but she's at that point where it exploded. She's at the far end where it'll reach, but she's also at every other liminal point across time and space, which again makes your head hurt when you think about it.
That's an interesting point, because I believe that we've discussed how she sees past, present, future, but I believe she exists in past, present, future. She doesn't just see it, she exists. That's something I believe. Jake, before we go on, Jay Gamer has an interesting question, and which leads into another thing I wanted to talk about, the media. He says, I have a question for you guys. Do you think Game Smite is very accurate with the lore of the gods and goddesses as Hekate with the lore background as well? I don't play it, so I don't know, but it is a great leading
I've never even heard of it, so I can't comment on that directly. But as far as representations in popular culture go, it is interesting because a lot of times, it's usually a half-baked attempt at representation of her. She's usually put as a antagonist, as a villain or a demon or something like that. Sometimes you get rare occasions where she's more accurately depicted, but then they'll go and drop a clanger. Prime example was the last sort of season of Sabrina,
where I knew you were going to say that.
Everything was fine until they started sort of throwing the C word around. But that's just me. Um, yeah, I mean, within the Covenant of Hekate, there is a devotee called Hazel. She did an extensive examination of all Hecate's pop culture appearances across screen and books and games and all that kind of stuff, and it's fascinating to see where she crops up, and obviously how badly she's represented in certain occasions. But again, it's that almost that all pervasive consistency, that despite her being dressed up in scary villainistic pop culture cinematic world, she's still we're still using her, we're still drawing on her, the inspiration of her through the ages, to to put her into computer games. I know she popped up in Assassin's Creed Odyssey. There's a whole
Oh, really?
thingy, uh, storyline part of quests where you're constantly going backwards and forwards between her and Persephone and various other ones. Again, not a game I've played, but just stuff that I've become aware of, reading about things online. Um, uh, but yeah, I mean, I always think that it's easy to take offense on things being um, misrepresented, especially when it's they see it as something because it's just a story or it's just a character. But obviously, for practicing pagans and witches, these are our gods, and But
Yeah.
I think it's just the way that a
I
very
take it personally sometimes.
yeah. I mean, but I think because of the way that our society is has kind of been dominated predominantly by a Christo patriarchal culture, it's very difficult to get adequate representation unless you're going to get pagans and witches on board to do the background information or the lore or whatever. um but yeah, it is, again, it's another rabbit hole you can fall right down.
Right. Uh, that's the basics of Hecate. This is so, and there's so much to cover. There's no way we'd be able to do it in one sitting. Um, I will say this: she's got us childbirth, so from birth, she's affecting us choices throughout our lives. She has sway over that if we allow it, and I invite it. The carnal aspect, she has the loving aspect, she has the family aspect, she has the home aspect, she has the protective aspect, the the aspect you call on for help with um, health, finances, wisdom, knowledge, spiritual, anything you can think of, you can call the goddess on. And when the time comes, when it's time for us to pass on to the next realm, I am confident in the fact that she will be there, even just to say sup. You know, um, I do. I've told you I want to be one of her pooches running at her feet. That is my dream. And when I'm having the worst time and difficult situations are happening, take a deep breath, take a drink of water, and I owe this to Gerald. I'll say sip, sip, and I'll think about running with the goddess on all fours, and just and it calms me down. It
Yeah.
really does. Um, Gerald's got me doing sip sip. So constantly throughout the day, I'm telling myself sip 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 sip. Um, is there anything you'd like to throw out about the goddess that people have come at you with?
um I mean, I've been asked this quite a few times recently because I've been doing a few of these like lives, or I've recorded a couple of podcasts this week. Um, and the one thing is they when people say to me, how or where to start with their approach to, or a new person's approach to sort of honoring Hekate or devoting themselves to Hekate, and it's easy to get overwhelmed with the range of knowledge and the variety of knowledge and the variety of sources, and not everybody's academically minded, so they're not going to do what I do and get a load of academic books from university and read all about the history and stuff. But that's just how my brain works. But it's not for it's not for everybody.
My brain works if I have questions. I call up an academic friend of mine who has studied books in college, and I'll ask him.
But what people can often sort of be putting off sort of the initiating the start of a relationship until the perfect time, and there isn't a perfect time. If you're waiting until you know enough or you have enough, or for the stars to align so that the time is right, it's not important. You don't need a big altar, you don't need all of the tools, you don't need a statue, you don't need anything. You just need your intent and yourself, and just start making that connection. It's easy enough to find copies of the ancient hymns, the Orphic hymn to Hekate online, so you can copy it out or print it out or even just have it on your phone, and just make a bit of space, a bit of time, light a candle if you can or want to, a bit of incense if it helps, or just sit quietly in a meditative sort of frame of mind, and then just read that ancient hymn, or if you're so inclined, write one. It doesn't have to be filled with all of the specifics of titles and qualities and stuff. Talk to the goddess, because she listens and she talks back. She's not, even though her name can mean worker from afar, if you call on her, she comes right up, really close.
Okay, here's something that people need to be aware of. Once you enter into a relationship with Hecate, it's real.
Mm,
Don't take it for granted. If you're getting, especially if you're a card reader or a psychic or a witch who gets your insight directly from the gods, and you get an insight and choose to go against that,
hmm
don't be surprised if shit happens. And I say this, and I'll tell you because very specific incident happened to me once where I was, every fiber of my being told me the gods are saying this, Hecate is saying this, and I went against it and did something else. As soon as I did it, 5 minutes later, I shit my pants out of nowhere. So that is an interesting thing, but that is an extreme thing, but it did happen. And
yeah, I
now,
mean, I think we're all
anytime I
guilty
get
of.
an insight,
I mean, I
yeah,
can't say
but
I can't
I
say
mean,
that
this
she's
is a
ever made me void my bowels in response to me not listening to her, but she certainly makes her
no,
presence known if I do.
this was a ritual. It was an important thing. I did a full ritual on a holy night and still went against what she said. And
Mm,
I just know that I offended. So I made reparations, I made offerings, and everything went back to Yippee Skippy. But um, I, in a formal manner, asked for help and then basically shit on it. So she shit on me. Um, and if people don't think that's funny, then I'm sorry because I find it hilarious. But it was a
oh yeah, I
lesson
mean,
learned, and I've never gone against
the
my
gods,
intuition since.
the gods have a very wicked sense of humor. They can laugh with us when they pull us
Yeah.
up on mistakes and things. One of
Oh yeah.
the prime one of my personal examples is a few years ago at a time when my cats are fighting. Sorry, hey, leave her alone, little bugger. Sorry, that's my two of my cats having a Barney. This Luna and Obsidian, they're not playing ball tonight. What was I saying? I've lost my thread now because the cats were screaming, were fighting. What was I going to say?
I know. I'm thinking. I hope the cats are okay. Are they all right?
It's Luna. She makes all the noise. She's a drama queen. They're not actually fighting. It's just her getting in the mood.
Yeah, my little Aria. She's a screamer. She's a drama queen too, for absolutely no reason, just because she
But
wants
the thing
to
is
be
Obsidian never learns his lesson. He's like right up in her face, and she's growling at him and hitting him in the face with her claws.
So we've had a great discussion today, Mr. Payne. Do you feel like pulling some cards?
Yeah, can do. I've got my deck here ready and waiting.
Okay, well then in that case, you guys, we're gonna go ahead and open up questions. Oh shoot, what did I just do?
What have you done?
Hold
You've
on.
stopped moving.
Yes, I have.
I can still hear you though.
Uh-oh. We may end up having to end the stream, Ken. Yeah. Hold on, I'm gonna exit out real quick. Maybe I'm not. Ken, I think we're gonna have
Oh, your
to
sound's
end
cut
it
out
after.
now.
Are you there?
I can hear you now. Oh, you've gone all together. Well, hopefully he'll be back. Until then, you've got me. I've hijacked his channel, and no idea what to do. I'm not very good at talking on these things when it's just me. But yes, thank you everybody for joining and talking. Oh, is he back? We have a black screen now. Bobby, are you there?
Ken, can you hear
I
me?
can hear you. It's all dark.
Oh no. Well,
Come to the light, Bobby.
I'm trying. I really
Oh, technology. It's great when it works, isn't it?
Yes. Okay. Now, it says I'm adding. Am I
Hey,
here?
you're there.
Look at that cute little face of mine. Okay. We're going to try to take some questions, you guys. I don't know why my internet is jacking up. So, yeah. If you have questions, let's see what everybody. Oh, this is not good, Ken.
Shenanigans has got a question. I can see.
Okay, what's the question?
So it says, would you gentlemen mind giving me a reading on, honestly, I don't know how to word this, but whether or not Hekate is open to a relationship with me? I will say before I even pull a card that there isn't really a no answer to that question. You just start making those connections. It may be that she is a little sort of at a distance because she's probably waiting to see, I suppose, how you sort of deal with it. But let's pick a card and we'll see if the goddess has got any specifics.
Yeah, and something you should know that even people who have worked with her for a long time, you will go through periods where you will feel like she's not as present um,
Yeah.
as you're used to. And you'll start
Mhm.
questioning, I haven't felt her. Has she forsaken me? What is going on? Don't worry about it. Okay? She's got other people to take care of. Don't stress. All right. Um, what'd you pull?
So interestingly, I pulled the Clydukos key bearer card. Now, this to me is just illustrating what I said. The goddess is there. She's the other side of this door. She gives you the keys. She can sort of initiate that sort of motion between one side and the other, but you have to open the door. She's there waiting. So I take this as a sign to say she's waiting for you to make that step. Succinct, but that's literally what I see in that card.
And I've got Medea, the Red Priestess.
Mm. Who is probably one of
Medea
the most devoted.
was one of the famous priestesses of Hekate. This card symbolizes magic.
No, I was going to
What's
say
that?
she's probably one of the most devoted that we know of from
Are you okay?
yeah. Can you hear me? Oh, you're frozen again.
Magic is afoot. Things are happening. So, when in application to your question, um, yes, magic is waiting for you. Step into your power, girl. Do it.
Mm.
Right? There is absolutely no. Think of it as you're at a party and you want to meet somebody. What do? You just go up and introduce yourself. Do it with reverence when you meet the goddess. Light a candle, sit down, relax, and just say, Goddess, I'd like to get to know you. And trust me, things will happen. It will start to happen. It really will. Who else has a question? Adam's pulling cards along with us. What does he say? He says, and I pulled card 11, Purity. 2 times out of 3 pulls over 3 nights, the other was ecstasy. Oh boy. Well, that's happening for you in a good way. Ecstasy, Eratotokia, that is a beautiful card. I was looking for it right now and I can't find it. Lust, sex, passion. Oh, but there's my other favorite card, the Soteric card. It's not the camera doing that, you guys. It's actually just light on the card. It looks really good. Uh, if
Shenanigans says
does
thanks. And
anybody
yeah,
have any other questions?
I'm
If
just
not, we've been
touching
on
back
for a
on
while, and I
shenanigans.
appreciate you joining. Should you have a relationship? Yes, there's absolutely no reason to stop, to pause. If you want to get to know her, and I'll let you in on a secret. Um, she's already aware that you want to get to know her. All right, so it's just the ball's in your court at this point. But Mr. Payne, I want to thank you for today. I had a blast. We had a great talk. We please made for us, and I want to use it again. But so everybody, I want to thank you all for being here, and we'll see you on the next episode of Behind the Path. Okay? There we go.